I think you can hear me and see me. It's Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. This is the pre-show for the Sarah Sanders White House press briefing, which is going to be coming up in 48 minutes at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about the different issues that Sarah Sanders might be asked about today. We'll try to figure out the one she's going to be asked about today. I don't know if we'll get all of them. I think we can get most of them. And we'll also, most importantly to me, get your comments and get your feedback about the briefing and what's going to be talked about. And I just want to make sure here that I can see your chat room here. There I am there. Okay, so I think we're all good here. Joe will let me know if we're having any kind of issue or anything. Did we get a notification? Let me see if we got one of those. Make sure everybody knows we're on the air. Ah, good. We're on the good. We got a notification. All right, all set. So if during the broadcast you'd like to write in, give your comments about any of the things we're talking about, I'd love to hear from you. You can give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let me know what you're thinking about all this healthcare bill stuff. Also, we're going to talk about some Trump tweets this morning. Well, it's not really morning, is it? It's afternoon. If I was on the West Coast, it would be morning. And so we'll talk about that stuff, and would love to hear what you think. So I think today I'm going to start with the Trump tweets from the morning, because I think that's what's going to be the first thing asked about in the briefing. If it's not the first thing, healthcare might be asked about first. But I think the tweets are going to be asked about first. So to catch you up, if you didn't know, a lot of you probably know this already, but President Trump sent a couple tweets out this morning about Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe. So why don't I just let me, as a prelude before showing you the tweets, let me say I do frequently watch that show or listen to that show, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And so there are episodes where they get quite negative towards Trump, and it was not always that way. But I'd say in the last couple months it's gotten that way. But it's not. What I like about Morning Joe, when I like it, is that I feel the discussion is a bit more intelligent and not just like one-sided than you see on a lot of mainstream media. And so when I've gotten frustrated with it the last couple months, it's not that they're criticizing the president. I'm all for hearing intelligent criticisms of anyone, but they tend to be these kind of silly, superficial criticisms. Sometimes I feel like inaccurate criticisms, and it becomes the thing, the superficial criticizing show, that the whole reason I tune into it regularly is because it normally or used to be not that kind of show. So that's what frustrates me about it. So anyways, I'm assuming the president, when he sent out these tweets, is reacting to the kind of thing, to me, that's been seen a lot the last couple months on the show, where they're giving these kind of mocking criticisms of the president that they seem a bit, they're not really balanced, and they don't even seem to involve like intelligent discussion. So, and this is a show that I watch all the time, and I don't watch many shows, but I feel like in the past they've had tons of intelligent discussion, and sometimes they still do. So I'm a fan of the show, but I'm just giving you the perspective here of what he might be reacting to. Anyway, so. And I didn't see the whole show this morning. I saw some of it, but there's possibly something very specific in the show today that he was reacting to. But let's just take a quick look at what he tweeted out this morning. So there were two tweets, and again, these got a lot of press, and I assume they will be asked about a number of times in the press briefing, which is why we're just talking about them here on the pre-show. So the first one, there were two tweets, right, one after the other. Let's show you these tweets. Here's number one. The real Donald Trump says, "I heard poorly rated Morning Joe speaks badly of me. Don't watch anymore. Then how come low IQ crazy Mika along with Psycho Joe came ... Now let's go to the other one. Came to Mar-a-Lago 3 nights in a row around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me. She was bleeding badly from a facelift. I said no." So there's been a bunch of strong reaction to this. A number of people have said they thought it was inappropriate for the president to be calling out Mika Brzezinski for bleeding badly from a facelift. And also I mean, there's the, oh, sorry, let me go back to the first one. There's the low IQ comment, and then there's Psycho Joe. Now, so there's this general thing where some people say the president shouldn't be just tweeting these personal attacks like this on his Twitter. Some people say that. Then there's this other criticism I've seen, which suggests this is like an anti-woman tweet, or these anti-women tweets. I guess maybe because it talks about the bleeding badly from a facelift. Now, personally, I think I'm not so buying the anti-woman thing, because I feel like if you look at President Trump's tweets, he has attacked men as well as women, and like Lion Ted, Little Marco, there's lots of different ways he's attacked men. So I feel like, and he just takes a thing about the person and specifically and attacks that part about the person. So I don't necessarily see what he said about Mika here as being like anti-woman. I think it might be like anti-Mika, but he also attacks men too. Anyways, I'm just giving you a summary of some of the reaction that's been out there to these tweets. And what was I going to say? And I'm doing this because I am pretty darn sure there's going to be several questions about this in the press briefing, probably right at the start of the briefing. So I want to just get this out there that's going to be asked about. I'd like to hear your feedback, though. Maybe you maybe disapprove, maybe you approve, maybe you don't have strong feelings about it either way. What do you think about this? So if you want to, give me a shout. Let me know. They're the tweets right there. Give me a shout on Twitter. Let me know, or email me. On Twitter, I'm at @Lookner, @LOOKNER. Or you can email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Let me see if we have any messages yet, because if we do, I'll read them. Okay. Cyrus Leone writes in, on July 20th, 2001, Joe's aide died after hitting her head on a desk while alone with him in Scarborough's Fort Walton Beach, Florida office. I know nothing about that. That's the first time I've heard of that. I'm not saying you're wrong. That's the first I've heard of it. You also say, Cyrus, also, bleeding morning Mika chose to get a facelift and then chose to everyday disrespect the president. She gets what she gets. So that is from Cyrus Leone. Thanks for the message, Cyrus. Going to pull up my email here. I think I might be caught up with everything. Okay, I'm caught up. So that's, it's now there's another view I want to raise. I talked about some of the criticisms people have made of the tweets, and there's another view I could see some people saying, which is like, that's why they like President Trump. So whenever he makes a tweet like this, you hear a lot of people, especially in the media, say, this is not presidential. And I understand where that view is coming from. So you'll hear, this is not presidential. But I do think there also might be people out there who think something like, well, we've had all these presidents who act presidential and nothing really gets done for the country that we like. So I don't mind that we have somebody who's not acting presidential if it means that they're going to be different from the previous presidents in trying to help the country and get stuff done for the country. I could just see somebody having that reaction. So I'm not endorsing different reactions here. I'm just giving you different views that people might say. So I could see that as well. Also, there was an interesting tweet this morning. Let me show you this tweet, because I retweeted it. I thought it was interesting. Let me see if I can find it on my Twitter feed here. Shouldn't be that hard to find. Well, maybe I didn't retweet it. Well, I'll tell you what it is. Let me go back to me for a second. So this tweet, I retweeted this. I thought I retweeted and didn't tweet. Said something like, somebody had written something like, remember, this man talked in a presidential debate about the size of his you-know-what, and then he won the election. And I think the general message of this tweet was, lots of people out there, especially in the media, might say, I can't believe President Trump is tweeting these things. How unpresidential and terrible. But don't forget that there might be a sizable segment of the American population that likes that he's tweeting this. Maybe this segment of the population says, I don't like that the press is constantly attacking President Trump, and I like that he fights back. He's a fighter, and he won't just take it. So, I'd be wary of reading too into any one view about this is what America thinks about these tweets. I think there's a lot of different reaction out there. Let's see. Sam Miller writes in, Hannity showed a music video last night that Morning Joe and Mika made about Trump. Couldn't show the whole video on TV. Very bad. And I'll say again, they have been critical, quite critical on that show of President Trump. Now, what I'm not saying is that criticality from the press warrants attack from who they're criticizing. I'm not, and so I don't want to have me. Again, I'm not taking views here. I'm giving you different views people might have. So, but there are people out there who do feel, look, there's some people out there who think the tweets are terrible. There's some people out there who think the tweets are perfectly fine given what they did on Morning Joe. So, here at Right Side Broadcasting, we don't tell you what to think. We give you different views. We let you decide what to think. And we try to have some calm, rational discussion rather than screaming discussion of superficial things like on most of the mainstream media. So that's what we're trying to do here. If you enjoy our coverage here, if you enjoy having an alternative to the mainstream media, I hope you consider making a donation because we do rely on you to stay on the air. We're viewer supported. If you'd like to donate, a couple easy ways to do that. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a chat room next to the broadcast. At the bottom of the chat room, there's a $sign. You can click on the $sign and make a donation that way. Or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Also, if you're interested in getting free stuff, and speaking of stuff, I forgot. For the post show, I'll grab my Right Side t-shirt. I said I was going to show it here and show people what it looked like. Anyways, if you're that's not some of the free, you can get like free stuff like mugs and other kind of neat Right Side stuff for making a monthly donation. So to find out about that, go to our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/rsbn. Okay, another thing that's going to be talked about today is this healthcare bill. I want to see if I can get this story up on the air. So hold on 1 second. Let me get this up on the screen for you. It'll help make my point that I'm going to make. Let's see. I know it's here. It's just not on the front page. Let me find it. I'm going to be so happy if I can't find it. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a story. The New York Times had a big story yesterday about, that was actually the lead story on their website last night. And it was like about how the Republicans might have to compromise with Democrats on this health care bill. Sorry, if I realized I was going to talk about it, I would have had it up on the screen. Let me do one more quick search. Compromise Democrats healthcare. So there's a lot of talk. Anyways, I can't find it. If somebody can find the article from the New York Times yesterday where it talks about the New York Times did a big story and it said basically, hey, McConnell might be forced to compromise with the Democrats if in the next couple days all the Republicans in the Senate can't get on board this latest health care bill. And to me, and I've heard other people talk about this too, this is not the New York Times talking about it, I have very strong doubts that there can be some kind of compromise with the Democrats worked out. In the kind of politically charged atmosphere we have now in Congress, this idea that like McConnell, if he can't get 50 senators to vote with him, or I guess including him, on this health care bill, that he can walk over to Schumer and say, hey, let's work out a compromise. And they work out a compromise where most of the Republicans are still totally cool with it and a few Democrats vote with it. Like, what is this compromise going to be? What is this plan going to be that some Democrats actually vote with Republicans and it doesn't turn off a bunch of Republicans? I'd love to know what that compromise is. I just feel like in this environment, maybe it could happen. I would be shocked if there was some kind of compromise. Because I think people on both sides would demand too much. And the kind of things that like the Democrats would demand in a compromise would be things that Republicans feel, a lot of them would feel they couldn't go along with, and vice versa. So this whole story I've seen floating in the last day or two that like, oh, there's going to be some compromise with the Democrats. I feel like that sounds like it's a story from like 30 years ago, but not from right now. And look, maybe I'm wrong. I have a hard time seeing what that compromise is going to be, that you're not going to lose too many people on one side or the other. There's also this issue of, even if they did compromise, if they compromised in the Senate and they went along with Democrats, would people with the Republicans in the House just be like, well, no, we're not voting for that? It's a whole other complication. So that's, but I do think you will see Sarah Sanders ask today, you know, hey, how's the bill going? Hey, is the president open to some kind of compromise with the Democratic senators on this if the Republicans can't agree? That kind of thing. Let's see. Roxanne Harrington said, hi, Steve. The tweets don't bother me. So Roxanne's talking about the tweets about Joe and Mika from the president. Hi, Steve. The tweets don't bother me. I'd rather have a person who stays true to him while still having our best interests at heart. And, you know, Roxanne makes an interesting point. Now, she says she doesn't bother me. She wants somebody to stay true to themselves. And I also think there might be people out there with a slightly different but similar view to Roxanne who say, you know, personally, I don't like those specific tweets and I don't like the attack tweets, but I do like that he's somebody who's real. He says what he thinks. He's not controlled by polls, and he's a fighter. And so I think that's out there too. And you know, I wonder. You hear a lot of stories in the media, mainstream media, saying when President Trump tweets, like it drives everybody in the White House crazy because he doesn't clear it through them, and then like a tweet like today, it just wrecks everything up because it takes attention off of healthcare and anything else he wants to do. So I understand that view, but at the same time, I wonder if there aren't some people in the White House when President Trump tweets something like this, who don't think like, you know, regardless of what the specific tweet says, the fact that he does something like this feels authentic to a lot of people, and it feels like he's a fighter to a lot of people, and it feels different for a politician to be doing this, and maybe they don't mind. So I wouldn't just assume that when President Trump sent out these two tweets this morning, like everybody else in the White House is like, oh, I can't believe he sent this. This is awful. What a disaster. I think there's some people there who think it might be a good thing, and think that a lot of Americans might like this. You know, and I should actually say, I have a tweet that made me remember a tweet I wanted to show you. Well, I didn't want to show it to you until I thought about it right now. But let me see if I can find this right here. I know who sent it out. Give me one more second here. I'm doing a little detective work and seeing if I can figure out which account it was from. Is it from this one? So to reveal the big thing, I believe it was a Dan Scavino tweet about Mika and Joe, and I saw it posted. I don't know if it was this morning. Here it is. I found it, so I can show it to you. This is from Dan Scavino's personal account. And Dan Scavino works in the White House. I'll give you his official title. Director of Social Media. Also someone who's very helpful to Right Side Broadcasting. I should give full disclosure, somebody very helpful to Right Side Broadcasting during the campaign when we were covering the rallies and stuff. But he tweeted out this morning, dumb as a rock, Mika and lover jealous Joe are lost, confused, and saddened since at POTUS real Donald Trump stopped returning their calls. Unhinged. Now, Dan Scavino is somebody who works in the White House. He's the director of social media. So, given this tweet, I don't think Dan Scavino Jr. is that unhappy when he sees President Trump's tweets about Joe and Mika this morning. I certainly don't. I wouldn't assume that he just sees President Trump's tweets and is like, "Oh my gosh, what a disaster!" because he tweeted this. And when did this? I'm interested. When did this tweet? I'm interested when. Sorry, this was at 7:19 a.m. Was this around the time that President Trump tweeted? I think it's around the same time. I'll get you the exact time in a second. So President Trump's tweets about Mika and Joe came out at 7:52 a.m. So unless there's some kind of hour difference on my clock, because I have two computers here, I believe they're on the same time, then that would suggest that Scavino he tweeted this made a tweet about Joe and Mika before President Trump even did. So my point here is just I don't think it's necessarily true that when President Trump tweets out like the tweets he did this morning about Joe and Mika, that everyone in the White House is like, what a disaster. Now you can agree or disagree with whether they should think that, but I've seen these stories about how people in the White House are just all like hate that the president tweets like this, but I don't necessarily think that's true. All right, let me go back here. Hey, I'm back. Okay, so this is Right Side Broadcasting. This is the pre-show for the Sarah Sanders press briefing. It's going to come on in 26 minutes. We'll have it here for you live. Then we'll have a post-show after. You can join us after for the post-show. So we've talked about how the two topics we've brought up for discussion, which I think will be the first two things asked about, are the president's tweets about Mika and Joe, and also the health care bill, what's going on with that. Now, also, Sarah Sanders was, I think, on Fox News this morning. I saw a story that she was on Fox News, and she talked about, I didn't see the interview, and she talked about this a bit, about the Twitter stuff. And I think she said something like, well, President Trump is a fighter, and he's fighting back against people who attack him. But I don't remember, I don't have the exact, I didn't see the interview. I read some accounts of it. Anyways, but I'm sure she'll be asked more about this. So, but this is the pre-show. We're talking about different things that Sarah Sanders is going to be asked about. And we'd love to hear from you. We've been reading your comments as well. My favorite part of the pre-show is when we hear from you. So if you have comments about any of these, the things we've been talking about, or anything else that Sarah Sanders might be asked about today, anything else big in the news, give me a shout. On Twitter, I'm at Lookner, at Lookner, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Thank you to the moderators on both YouTube and the website for moderating the chats today. Much appreciated. Hello also to everybody on Facebook who's watching. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to share our video. We like when you do that. That gets the word out about Right Side Broadcasting. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like our video. And also, don't forget, if you want to hear about all the Right Side videos, subscribe to us on YouTube and hit the notifications bell. And also like and follow us on Facebook. We love when you do those things. It helps us so much. And then it helps us tell you about our videos, so more of you can know when we're coming up with, like, when we have a video coming out, or we do a breaking news video or something. I have another message here I want to get to. Vicky R writes in, don't watch Morning Joe, but after Trump's tweet, I wonder if on mainstream media is anyone criticizing Morning Joe or CNN or CBS, etc., on the hateful things they say on their shows towards Trump. They only discuss Trump's response. I think that the anchors and the pundits have a responsibility to quit, judging our president without proof. They never discuss that angle, or do they? So, good question, Vicky. Thanks for writing in. Now, one thing I'll say in relation to your comment is, as somebody who's watched Morning Joe many times, there have been times on the show where Mika Brzezinski has said Donald Trump is insane, like crazy, and not like in a psychological diagnosis way or psychiatric diagnosis way, not just sort of like figure of speech way. So, now, I have no information on this. I'm not a doctor, so I can't pretend to donate it. But there are some people out there, and I've seen some people on Twitter respond to this and say they don't think she should be doing that. So, Vicky, what Vicky says is she has a problem with the way a bunch of the media is attacking Donald Trump and the way they do it. So, thank you, Vicky, for writing in. And again, I'm taking no view on all this. I'm just giving you different views people might have on the situation. Andrew Sova says, Donald Trump has had an impressive couple of weeks. Fake news is unraveling. P.S. Nice shirt and tie. Thank you, Andrew. I think I've worn this once before, but as I mentioned on the last broadcast, we got some complaints that there were never any solid colors, so trying some solid color shirts. Thank you. Carlos at Men's Warehouse deserves a thank you for this color combination. Roma writes in, I love Trump and his Twitter, but he has to run his tweets by someone trusted by sending one out. So this is an interesting, different view that people have out there in the world. So Roma is someone who does love President Trump, says, I love President Trump and his Twitter. So Roma loves President Trump's Twitter. So there are people out there who love Trump and think and love the way he tweets, but they just think once in a while or sometimes his tweets don't help him, and that's why he says he has to run his tweets by someone trusted before sending one out. Now, I don't know if he does that. There are different views on this. Part of me thinks he just tweets what he wants, but it's also possible that he runs his tweets by one or two people he's close to, and they really, like, unless he tweets out like something like the worst thing ever, they're not going to stop it. Or maybe they check for like spelling and stuff. So I feel like one of those two things is the case. I don't know which. But Roma, it sounds like you think you would like there to be a bit more of an oversight process or an advisory process for people. Now, Roma, another possibility is that President Trump, he takes his tweets, he writes it up, he shows it to a bunch of people. He does get their feedback, but then ultimately he makes the ultimate decision. So there are a number of things that could be going on, but what your general idea of what you're saying is you love Trump, you love his Twitter, but you do once in a while at least think the tweets are counterproductive for him. And I've heard this view from people too, from Trump supporters. So a lot of different views about this out there. Thank you, Roma, for writing in. Victoria writes in, aggression begets aggression. I like a president who is honest and fights back. Would not have it any other way. So Victoria is someone who likes that the president is fighting back. I Stand With Trump sent me a video, a Liz Wheeler video. I'll have to watch that later. Thank you, I Stand With Trump. Rag Daily sent me a link to the Joe Scarborough video. Let's see if I can play this. Hold on a second. I'm going to see if I can play this. System video on. If the sound somehow gets messed up, someone please let me know. So, Rag Daily sent me this. Let me get this up on my screen right now. Oh, and before I forget, we have another message here. Sorry, that was something different. Okay, Rag Daily. This is info. So this was Rag Daily posted. Joe Scarborough releases anti-Trump music video. He's horrified by America. This was posted by InfoWars. And let's see if we can see the video. Okay, here it is. All right, so I'm getting this from InfoWars. I'm going to go to it right now. So this is supposedly it. Let's see if I can make this work, people. I haven't watched this video yet, so let's see if I can make it work. I'm muting my mic now so we don't get feedback. Okay, so that's just the first 2 minutes of the video. It's 5 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but Joe, to answer your question, I have no idea. So it's his video. So I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to play that, but it's from Scarborough. So I'm not going to play the rest of it though, because it's so long. Let's see here. So that was Joe Scarborough's music video. Okay. So we just wanted to show you some of that, and so if you want to go see the rest of it, InfoWars has it posted. Thanks for sending that in, Rag Daily. Okay, some more comments for you. So let me get from you guys. Let me get me back up here. And Roma sent me a video and says, PC Stops Here, first of all, said, President Trump's tweets float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. That's from the PC Stops Here. Roy Blevin says, thank you for the broadcast, Steve. You always do good work. There was another channel called Golden State Times. Now that's a channel that I don't really want to talk about them on the air, but we're aware of them. There's a guy who comes on air and just said that he has the only true feed on YouTube and pays for it, and while everyone else and that goofy guy at Right Side steals the White House feed. Oh, he says that about us. All right, just thought you should know. I'm a loyal viewer, hoping to see Margaret back soon. Thanks, Roy. So all I'll say about that is that we know Joe, you can tell. I can say something, Joe, about it or not say something about it. So I know Joe's helping produce today, but Joe, if you have any comment on Golden State Times guy, text it to me and I'll read your comment on the air. I'll let you deal with that, Joe. Thanks for writing in, though, Roy. Cyrus Leone says, Steve, people have to realize President Trump's tweets are not emotional; they are strategic. Joe's comment, Joe Seal, CEO of Right Side, his comment about what Golden State Times guy says is, because Golden State Times guy, I guess today said on his channel that we steal our feed and they buy all their feeds. And Joe's his only comment is, it isn't true, obviously. That's from Joe Seals. Someone sent me, Roma sent me, he or she said this is the clip maybe that President Trump was mad about from today on Morning Joe. So let me get to Roma's video. Here it is. Oh, I saw this clip. So this is a clip where Mika, I think she mocks Morning Joe's. If it's the same clip I saw, she makes fun of, it might be different, but she supposedly is making fun of, this might be different. She makes fun of the fake Time magazine cover that reportedly was up at some of President Trump's properties of President Trump on Time magazine cover, on the cover. Okay, so I'm going to play this for you, this video here. So hold on one second.
Was so needy he had not been on Time yet that he made his own. Okay?
Oh my God.
This is your boss. This is your boss. He put this on display at least 5 of his clubs. It was first flagged by a reporter. Notice the use
Trump is sitting on out front, even TV.
Several exclamation points on the headline, something Time magazine doesn't do. The make-believe cover is dated March 1st, 2009 and highlights Trump's reality show, The Apprentice. Time magazine has since asked Trump to remove the phony cover. Phony. A phony, fake, pathetic, made-up cover of Time magazine.
That's
your boss.
In an email to the Post, the White House couldn't comment on whether the president knew it wasn't a real cover.
You should do some covers of yourself. You could just make them up.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Like Trump.
And by the way, Willie, I don't have to, because as you know, GQ, how many times have they had me on their cover?
Well, look at you.
About,
it's amazing.
And
Roll Tide.
that is this month's GQ, and I've got to say,
this sweater, it's just hot.
I wouldn't go
Our
hanging.
man of the year.
I wouldn't go hanging that. Oh, mystified up the charge. How great. He's already made America great again, Willie, but you know what? I wouldn't go putting that up like in my clubs or going on my TV show.
That would be needy.
No.
I was
be
surprised to
desperate.
see GQ put Roll Tide on the rough.
I know.
Yeah.
that was from Morning Joe this morning. And Roma says perhaps that is what made President Trump mad today, seeing that. Now, in reference to this, and so there's this aspect of this also which is interesting, which is they're not just criticizing him for the fake time cover. They're like actually doing like comedy bits that make fun of it, like doing a fake Joe Scarborough GQ cover. Let me show you though. There was a tweet. This I did retweet this morning, which I think I thought it was an interesting perspective that somebody had on this, on why President Trump might have been upset. And hold on a second. So here it is. This is from Jennifer Jacobs. So Jennifer Jacobs, who I follow, she's a nice, I think a good neutral source of news she's from Bloomberg. She says, starting at the bottom there, the first of these tweets, Trump insider tells me the media still doesn't understand Trump. Granted, the facelift tweet was unpresidential, but Trump considered Joe a true friend, helped him during some delicate times. And that's the lens Trump uses to view Joe now as Morning Joe criticizes him. And I do know Trump and Joe and Miko are, or at least were, very, very close. They talked all the time on the phone and in person during the campaign, after the election, during the transition. So they're very, very close. They talked all the time. Even not like just like 6 months before the election, but like all throughout the whole campaign process and during the transition, they did meet and they did talk. So, perhaps there's some kind of thing going on like this person, Jennifer Jacobs quote says, where it upsets President Trump that this past very close friend of his is mocking him in the way he did in that video we saw, or otherwise on his show. So that could play into this too. So we have about 10 minutes till the press briefing is going to start. We will bring that press briefing to you. We'll be back here after for the post show, so stick around for the post show. Also, at 3:15 Eastern today, President Trump is supposed to make remarks on energy. We will have those for you live at Right Side Broadcasting. We won't be doing a pre and post show for that. We'll just have the remarks for that. But please tune in. If you'd like to write in before the briefing starts with more comments, we've been reading your comments here. Thank you. On the Joe and Mika situation, the tweets, the videos, all that stuff, or the health bill, or anything else that Sarah Sanders might be asked about today, give me a shout on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner. Feel free to follow me on Twitter too. I post a lot of breaking news stuff about the kind of stuff we've been talking about today and other breaking news. Follow Right Side Broadcasting too at RSB Network. Or you can email me, steve.lookner@rspn.tv. And let me just also say again, thank you to the moderators in the chat room today. And mind you, we are viewer supported. The reason we can bring you an alternative to the mainstream media like this and cover all the press briefings and cover all the big news that comes up and have calm, rational discussion. Calm, rational, open discussion without an agenda. The reason we can do that is you let us do that when you donate to us. And we can't stay on the air without donations. It's expensive to run a network like this and have it be on the air all the time. So if you can donate, we'd really appreciate it. You can go to the chat room. On YouTube, at the bottom of the chat room, there's a $sign right next to the broadcast. There's a $sign at the bottom of the chat room. You can click on that, or email us, or you can go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate to donate. I'm going to look and see if there are more comments. Ryan Bardwell says, Steve, if President Trump never tweeted again, the press and the lefters would bash him for that. LOL, thanks for all you do, Steve. You're welcome, Ryan. Thanks for writing in. Full Armor writes, I don't listen to Morning Joe and did not appreciate having to listen to them, although I know why you played it. Yeah, so it's I'm sure there are some of you out there, if you're fans of President Trump and you don't like, and you there are some of you out there who might not have wanted to watch that, but it's relevant, and I thought it was relevant to the story we're talking about today, and so that's why I played it. Sent in by a nice viewer who sent that in, so I thought it was worth seeing it. And even if you didn't like it, now you understand the story a little better, especially if you haven't seen Morning Joe. You might not have known what President Trump might be upset about. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily what he's upset about, but it might be. Miss Sherry writes in, 1/3 of these tweets aren't a bother. Sorry, 1 of 3. You're right, 1 of 3. This might be 3 messages. So I'll wait, Miss Sherry, to read the rest of your messages because I don't want to read the first one and then not read them all in context. So I'll wait for you. Check my email here. Jeff Brett Schneider writes in, hey, Steve, ideally President Trump's tweets should float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Now, hold on a second. I feel like 2 different people have written in this quote, and it's a Muhammad Ali quote. So are you saying, I don't know, is the fact that 2 different people have referred to this quote referring to something? I'm not sure. Feel free to clarify. Okay, I'm still waiting for the 3rd of Miss Sherry's tweets, and I will, or messages to me, and when I get the 3rd one, I'll read those. And, real quick, what else? There's probably going to be some stuff asked about today besides this. Well, what was it? The House is voting on a couple of immigration-related bills today. They're bills, one of them is like Kate's Law, and I forget what the other one is called, but they have to do with one of them relates to sanctuary cities and cutting off funding from them. Another one relates to stricter punishments for people who get deported and come back into the country. So there's a couple of those being voted on the House. I don't know how they'll do in the Senate, even if they pass the House. But those are, President Trump was tweeting this morning about, on his POTUS account, about those bills. So we can look at that in a moment. Okay, so Miss Sherry writes in, these tweets aren't a bother to me. Only when someone smears another person's character or integrity unjustly and based solely on a snapshot in time does that bug me. Stirs up righteous anger. People aren't snapshots. There's always a bigger picture. Interesting tweet. So interesting message, Sherry. So I can't tell, Sherry, are you saying that are you saying Joe and Mika are doing this kind of criticism? Or criticism you don't like? Are you saying President Trump sometimes does this? Are you saying they both sometimes do it? Feel free to clarify and write in. But thank you, Sherry. And but you did see those tweets aren't a bother to you, so I don't think you're bothered by President Trump's tweets about Joe and Mika this morning. It sounds like. I think you're directed more at Joe and Mika than you are at President Trump. But if I'm not right about that, Miss Sherry, let me know. Cyrus Leone says, Steve, playing the Psycho Joe video is fine. To think that Bleeding Mika and Psycho Joe call the president narcissistic. So you're talking about his music video, I think. What was the deal with that music video? I know he just came out with an album. Just looking up here. I'm seeing if I can find a brief description of something of it or something. Somebody wrote me in. Let me check the person who wrote me in about that video, if I can find it. Now I can't find it. These things, they come and they go. Oh, Deplorable Sunny, by the way, writes in. Here's a Breitbart article on Donald Trump. I wouldn't be here at all if it wasn't for Twitter. Every tweet he writes is covered all day. They are strategic and thought out for the mainstream media and America first. So that is from Deplorable Sunny. I want to show you real quick. Actually, I was going to look. Let me take one more second and see if I can find. Somebody sent me. I think it was Roma who sent me that music video. I can't remember when the person sent me the music video, the Joe Scarborough music video. There was an article from InfoWars about it, and I was going to real quick check what if that article gave more information on the video, and I can't find the message anymore. It's not a big deal. I also want to show you real quick President Trump's tweets about the immigration stuff this morning, because that very well could be asked about in the press briefing, which is going to start, in about 3 minutes now. Here we go. Look, folks. I wasn't making this up. So President Trump says, today the House votes on No Sanctuary for Criminals Act and Kate's Law. Pass these bills and let's make America safe again. So President Trump tweeted that out this morning. He also tweeted out this. No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, Kate's Law, Save American Lives. He also tweeted out this. This is all this morning. Attorney General Sessions, Congress must pass Kate's Law and make America safer. And even last night, President Trump tweeted out, he retweeted Dan Scavino, who tweeted out, no sanctuary for criminals at Kate's Law, save American lives. So that is something that President Trump has been pushing, and that's very well something. I think Sarah Sanders will talk about it. Maybe there'll be questions about it in the briefing. We'll see. We'll see what happens. What else do you think will be talked about in the briefing today? Give me a shout before it starts. Feel free to write to me during the briefing, and I'll read your comments on the air afterwards. If you have thoughts about what's going on during the briefing, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Lookner or email me steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Yeah, Miss Sherry just writes in again, clarifying her messages. They were not directed at Trump. They were directed at Mika and Joe and other people in the media. What else might they ask Sarah Sanders about today? Oh, well, the travel ban. I forgot about that. The travel ban is coming into effect, I believe, tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And the State Department released, clarification on, if you remember, the Supreme Court said the travel ban can be enforced, but it can't be enforced for people who have a bona fide connection to the United States, but they didn't say what that bona fide connection was. So the State Department issued some bona fide relationship, and they issued some clarity on that today, and I'm looking it up right now. So now the New York Times in their article, they said close family is defined as a parent, including a parent-in-law, spouse, child, adult son or daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, sibling, whether whole or half. This includes relationships, step relationships, but it doesn't include grandparents, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law, fiancés, and any other extended family members. So again, according to the New York Times, sons and daughters-in-law can get visas even from like the 6 travel ban countries, or even if they're refugees, but brothers and sisters-in-law cannot. So that's going to be starting tonight, the enforcement of that, and I'm guessing there will be some questions about that on in the briefing too. That briefing is going to start any moment now. We'll go to it, and I will hear from Joe as soon as we have the feed, and Joe's going to switch to it. He will let me know, and we'll go right to it. Until then, we're going to keep talking about what's coming up during the briefing. I'm sort of interested. I could see the Joe and Mika tweets getting a couple questions, or I could see them getting like 10 questions. Let's see here. Oh, good. So I guess we have the feed up from where I'm sitting. Oh, great. Wonderful. So Joe just told me you can actually, if you're watching me. Oh, I can see this. Sorry. You have the feed. It's not up yet. Oh, there we go. It's up. Okay, it is up. So Joe, do you want to do some kind of like have me keep talking, or do a split screen, or how should we do this, Joe? I'm seeing the feed on our YouTube broadcast. So people watching our YouTube broadcast, you are now seeing the live feed from the room. Great. And I see, who's that? John Harwood and Kristen Welker. There we go. So yeah, so Joe's going to do something where he goes back and forth or does a split screen or something. But as soon as the actual briefing starts, we will go to it. Okay, so Joe's going to switch back and forth, and he's going to try to get a split screen up for you of the briefing room, but we will go to it right when it starts. Ryan Bardwell wrote me and says, oh, the Associated Press reported that I'll show you what he showed me. Hold on a second. I'll get it up here. Why don't I just show you rather than read it to you? It's always easier. If I can get it up on the screen. There it is. Thanks, Ryan, for sending this in. The White House says President Trump will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit next week. That's big news. Hey, I'm going to retweet that. So that I think will be talked about. Maybe. Well, I think maybe that'll be asked about in the press briefing. Oops. Thanks, Ryan. Sam Miller says, do you think... Sam, you're right. Another story that will be asked about today is this whole Iraq thing. So, as Sam points out, let me show you that. Now, I know this says Metro West Daily News, but this was widely reported. The Iraqi prime minister declared an end to the ISIS caliphate. And also, I believe the main fighting in Mosul was declared over today. And the Iraqis said, hey, we've basically taken Mosul back from ISIS. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on there. From what I've heard, there's still some pockets of ISIS resistance there. But that is something that will, I think, might be asked about in the briefing today. So thank you, Sam, for sending that in. I forgot to mention that story. Oops, what am I doing here? Let's go back to me. And someone else sent a message in. Andrew Sova writes, this news I read is pretty gruesome, but have you heard about this? The Islamic State jihadis cooked a starving sex slave's baby boy, then fed him to his unsuspecting mother. So I haven't heard this, Andrew, but also there's no link. I have no idea where you're getting this story, Andrew. So did you just hear a rumor, or did you read a news story? Feel free to send me a link. I know nothing about this. Any moment now, we will be going to this briefing. Well, any moment now, if she comes in at any moment. So we are keeping an eye on the feed. As soon as it starts, we'll bring it right to you. We'll be back here for the pre-show after, and post-show afterwards. Oh, we're going to the briefing right now. Enjoy the briefing. I'll see you afterwards for the post-show.
Good afternoon. I'd like to invite Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin up to speak first with all of you and take a few questions regarding a recent announcement on sanctions. And as always, I will be back after to answer your questions.
Thank you. Today, the Trump administration is continuing its efforts against the government of North Korea. Despite multiple UN Security Council resolutions imposing international sanctions, the government of North Korea continues its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Today, Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has found the Bank of Dandong to be a foreign financial institution of primary money laundering concern under Section 311 of the USA Patriot Act. This bank has served as a gateway for North Korea to access the U.S. and international financial systems, facilitating millions of dollars of transactions for companies involved in North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The United States will not stand for such action. This will require U.S. banks to ensure that the Bank of Dandong does not access the U.S. financial system directly or indirectly through other foreign banks. This action reaffirms the Treasury Department's commitment to ensure that North Korea is cut off from the U.S. financial system. In addition, the Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control has sanctioned 2 individuals and 1 entity for their continued support of North Korea's activities. While today's actions are directed at Chinese individuals and entities, we look forward to continuing working closely with the government of China to stop illicit financing involving North Korea. We are in no way targeting China with these actions. We will be meeting with China and other countries at the G20 next week to further our efforts to cut off North Korea's illicit activities. North Korea's provocative, destabilizing, and inhumane behavior will not be tolerated. We are committed to targeting North Korea's external enablers and maximizing economic pressure on the regime until it ceases its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. North Korea. Recently, the congressman introduced about the North Korea travel ban. do Treasury Department have any guideline for the North Korean Travel Ban Act?
I have no comments on that today, although I will say we will continue to look at a range of options as we are very serious about them stopping their activity.
Can you quantify the financial activity that you're trying to stop today and the access, direct and indirect, this particular bank had to the U.S. financial markets?
Well, this is very significant since this is the first bank that we've cut off under this, and that we will continue to look at these actions and continue to roll out sanctions. As I said, in this case, it's millions of dollars, but we are committed to cutting off all illegal funds going to North Korea.
Explain how it works. You explain how it works, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, so when we put sanctions,
What they're doing now and what you're trying to stop.
this bank will not be able to access the U.S. financial system either directly or indirectly, so it's a very significant action.
Secretary, you made clear that this was not a punishment against China, but obviously the White House wants to be putting pressure on Beijing to take action against North Korea. Are you satisfied that China will see it that way, and with what China is doing currently against North Korea?
Well, I think, as you know, President Trump and President Xi have had very productive conversations about North Korea, and we appreciate their work and hope they will continue to work with us. Notwithstanding that, we are taking these actions to show the seriousness in which we are going to deal with this. In the back.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Can you talk more about the link between this specific bank and the government of North Korea? We're trying to get a better picture of what exactly they were funding in North Korea.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the specifics of that because it does involve certain intelligence, but again, I can tell you we have very specific intelligence, and again, we will follow the money and cut off the money.
Mr. Secretary, would you be able to explain to us, I know you did the research, the actual economic impact this is going to have on the North Koreans and how that economic impact negatively may cause them a change in their position?
Well, I think, as you know, in Iran, the sanctions were very effective, and that's what's brought Iran to the table. And we will continue to work with our allies, and we will continue to speak to people at the G20. We are firmly committed to work with other nations to cut off illicit financing.
Mr. Secretary, was China given a heads up in any way about the action that you're announcing today? And you used a term that in your statement. Is China an enabler as it relates to North Korea?
Again, I'm not going to comment specifically on our behind-the-scenes conversations. We've obviously had very productive conversations with them. Again, as I said, this is not directed at China. This is directed at a bank as well as individuals and entities in China. And again, whether in China or there anyone else, we will continue with sanctions.
Simply move their assets from this particular bank to another bank in China? Are they permissible to do
Again,
that?
if we find other activity, we will sanction other entities. Nobody's off limits.
Quick follow-up on China. Can you just characterize whether you think China's doing enough? Because last week the president tweeted, "While I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi in China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know China tried." It sounded like he was giving up on China. Has he?
I don't think the president is giving up in any sense. I think we will continue to work with China and everyone else. The president is firmly committed that we will cut the money off to North Korea until they behave properly.
Asks of South Korea, and he asks of the South Korean leader
If
today.
you don't mind. That's two different topics. One, how much do you feel that China can actually move the needle on North Korea? Two, in terms of tax reform, you say you've got 100 folks over there roughly at the Treasury Department dealing with that issue. Are there any contingency plans in place in case health care doesn't get done? And thirdly, Janet Yellen, how much is the administration seriously considering her to remain on as Fed chair?
Well, that's an awful lot of questions. So let me work backwards. Again, no decisions have been made in regards to the Fed chair. Gary Cohn and I will at some point make recommendations to the president, but no decisions have been made on that. In regards to tax reform, I think, as you've heard Gary and I say, we are very committed to get tax reform done this year. It is one of the president's top priorities for economic growth. I think the people of America understand that we need economic growth, and we're committed to doing that. I expect that health care hopefully will get done, but regardless, we are committed to getting tax reform done. And you had so many questions, I forgot your first one.
And how much, well, let me actually follow up with you on tax reform, if you don't mind. Paul Ryan had said today that things are on track. Why should the American public believe that things are actually on track with what we see what's going on with healthcare reform, and it seems like the timeline keeps getting pushed?
Oh, well, why shouldn't the American public believe it? Of course they should believe it. We've said that. Speaker Ryan has said that. Chairman Hatch has said it. We are all 100% committed to getting tax reform done this year.
Question on the sanctions, Secretary. In February, you received a letter from lawmakers suggesting that the Treasury Department should consider sanctioning the Bank of China. My question to you is, have you reconsidered that idea? Do you think that idea is on the table? And then the second question I had is about the debt ceiling. My understanding is that the debt ceiling drop dead time for you all is October. Does that give Congress additional time in your mind, or would you still like them to act earlier?
I haven't given any specifics in regards to the drop dead date. What I have said is that I hope that Congress acts before they leave. Yet we do have contingency plans if they don't, so that the market shouldn't be concerned. But again, I think for the benefit of everybody, the sooner that they do this, the better. And as it relates to banks, again, I think as you've seen, we've taken very significant action today. We will continue to take very significant action, rolling out additional sanctions on North Korea until they stop their behavior.
Secretary, one question on indirect access to the banking system. Are you aware of other banks that are providing similar access to North Koreans to the international financial system, and what other banks are you prepared to take steps against going forward?
Again, let me just say, we have a team of people, both in Treasury and working with the intelligence agencies, and as we see other banks or individuals or entities, you can expect we will continue to roll out additional sanctions. This is something we take very seriously. We will be having discussions with our counterparties at the G20. This is a big priority of ours.
Mr. Secretary, you said that this is not about targeting China, but this is aimed at a Chinese bank. Does it speak to a message that you're trying to send to China in any way, specifically right before the G20? Or is this really an indication of how limited your options are in terms of just dealing with North Korea directly?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say in any way it's limited in what our options are. Quite the contrary. We are committed and we will work with everybody, and nothing's off the table. Where we see illicit financing, we will stop it. And there's no message before the G20. The message to everybody at the G20 is this is a serious issue. We're going to work with everybody. But if there is illicit financing going on, we will cut it off from the U.S. financial system, which has significant impacts.
Just to follow up, you're saying that in no way this is a message aimed at China.
I specifically said in my comments this wasn't aimed at China. We continue to lurk. We continue to work with them. Again, this is about North Korea, and this is about how serious we're taking this, and kind of whether it's China or anybody else, we will take this seriously.
Will this help with the release of the 3 Americans still detained?
I'm not going to make any comments about that.
Deanna Christen's question here, you say, quote, the president is firmly committed that we will cut the money off to North Korea until they behave properly. How are you defining success with that? In other words, what are you exactly looking for?
I think you're going to know success when you see it.
Well, no, I'm asking how do you and the administration do it?
Again, I think you're going to, I think everybody will know success. Their behavior is unacceptable, and it will be very clear kind of we want them to stop doing tests, the ballistic missile programs, and others. It's very clear.
Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you something that a lot of people don't understand, and you're uniquely qualified to explain. The administration and Congress are saying there will be $321 billion in savings from the health care bills that are out there. But isn't that because people and benefits are being taken away? So isn't this really just a takeaway?
Not at all, okay? And one of the flaws of the scoring on the CBO, on this, when you look at the number of people, is that, again, there's a lot of people, when given the option, will decide not to elect to take this health care because it's a bad deal. That doesn't mean people are losing health care. I think everybody knows Obamacare was just a giant tax hike on the economy. It slowed down the economy. It's another reason why we've continued to have sub 2% growth for the last 8 years. And this administration is 100% focused on creating economic growth, creating jobs, creating proper wages, and getting this economy back to 3% or higher. Yes, right here in the front.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I've got a couple of dorky finance questions. Could you talk about, just if push came to shove, would you advise for prioritizing debt payments or not? And do you believe that CFIUS review of Chinese investments into the U.S. should be more careful or more involved?
Well, again, let me just make a comment on CFIUS. I do chair CFIUS. I take it very seriously, and I can tell you the reviews are very careful and very involved no matter who's on the other side. It's very important for national security, and we will use that to the maximum powers. And in regards to prioritization, I think that Congress should act quickly, raise the debt ceiling, and we should pay our debts on time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I was going to say congratulations too.
Thank you.
Two questions. First, you were a participant along with Madame Lagarde at the last IMF World Bank meeting, and you certainly know there was some concern about what the future U.S. policy is toward involvement with the International Monetary Fund. What is the U.S. policy toward that and toward involvement in financial relief in the Eurozone?
So let me just say I've had the pleasure of meeting with Christine, at least a dozen times. I think the IMF plays a very important role in looking at currency and world economies. The IMF was very helpful in regards to stabilizing the Greece situation and working with Europe. I think that could have been a major problem this summer that would have had significant concerns to the markets and the economy, and I think she was a very important part of those negotiations.
Well, my second question was, how do you feel about maintaining the U.S. level of support at the IMF at the current level, and specifically as a part of the relief for Greece, because the U.S. role is through the IMF in relief of the Greek financial crisis?
Yeah, well, let me just comment. The IMF commitment to Greece was quite small. I'm not even sure that Greece are necessarily going to use that, so I think the significance was really more of a stamp of approval. And again, there's no direct cost to the U.S. or the taxpayers, and we're supportive of the IMF, although we'll look at our contributions to the IMF like we look at all contributions very carefully and making sure we're spending the taxpayers' money properly. In the back, yes.
Clarify which entities are being sanctioned, because the paperwork that OFAC sent out also includes Dalian Global Unity Shipping, 2 Chinese individuals, does not mention the Bank of Dandong in that paperwork. So is it 4 total entities?
So there's 2 different actions. There is a FinCEN action against the Bank of Dandong, and then there are the 3 OFAC sanctions, as you've pointed out.
So we should see a release from which part of Treasury? You said FinCEN?
You will see. FinCEN, there'll also be a release on the bank.
Communicate this in advance to Beijing? That
Again,
this was
I'm not making any comments on our behind the scenes, how we can communicate.
Tax reform. You're a mathematical man. What are the chances that we get a 15% corporate tax rate or a 25% corporate tax rate in the final bill?
Let me just comment. Tax reform is a pass-fail exercise, okay? And we're going to get this passed for a plan that's good for the American public. So we are working closely with the House and the Senate, and we're going to get a bill that's passed that's going to be great for this economy, great for Americans, putting people back to work.
Is it a revenue neutral exercise? Is it a revenue neutral
How is
exercise?
it possible for reducing the funding source for the health care to lead to lower premiums and expanded coverage?
Again, I'm here primarily to talk about sanctions and tax reform, but I will comment again on health care, although it's not my primary area. The health care that's been in place is a bad deal for the American public, okay? And that's why a lot of people aren't using it, okay? It was a giant tax hike to the American economy, and premiums have been going up a ton. So we're looking at making the system more competitive so people can actually afford it.
We heard from your counterpart at the Department of Homeland Security that airports all over the world have to step up aviation security because there's this threat. This is the product of a months-long discussion within the interagency process that resulted in yesterday's decision. I'm wondering if you, sir, are convinced that the potential security risk. Are you satisfied that the security risk outweighs any potential economic risk if, for example, certain airlines are cut off or certain airports are cut off if they don't comply?
Well, let me just say, I can think of nobody better than General Kelly to protect our country in this position. Again, I've had the opportunity to discuss these issues with him at the National Security Council. I'm not going to comment specifically, but let me make it clear. The safety of the American public is our utmost concern, and we will never, ever put economic issues, okay, where we will risk the lives of the American public.
Mr. Secretary, on tax reform, are you going to be revenue neutral? And if the CBO and JCT say you don't get the growth or the revenue, what are you going to do?
Okay, again, let me just first say there will be complete transparency when we come out with the plan. We are in the process of listening sessions. We've literally met with hundreds and hundreds of CEOs, think tanks, various different groups. I was over at the House twice today talking to people at the House of Representatives in groups. We've been at the Senate. We're listening. And as we develop this plan, we've said we're going to have a responsible plan that is paid for. And we do believe in dynamic scoring, and we're going to take that into account.
Mr. Secretary, the GDP for the first quarter came out today at 1.4%. It was slightly better than economists anticipated. But during the campaign, the president repeatedly promised to have growth rates of between 3 and 4%. Two questions. First, how much of that 1.4% is attributable to the actions of this administration or inactions? And secondly, when are we going to start seeing the 3 to 4% growth rate that the president promised?
So again, I think I've been very clear on what our projections are for growth, and that we believe that we can get to 3% or higher GDP. We've been very clear that that's not this year, that's not next year. It will take some time to scale in. Our projection over the 10-year period is actually 2.9%, which I think is quite conservative, scaling up to 3 and staying there, which I think both the president and I believe we can do better than 3%. So our projections in the budget are quite conservative. I think that to the extent we can get health care passed, to the extent we can get tax reform passed, to the extent we can roll back regulatory issues, which we're working on very carefully, both in financial and in energy and in other areas, we are very comfortable that we will hit these growth projections. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and then I'm going to have to turn it over to the superstar over here. No, yes.
Okay, thank you. The president said before that if China is not going to help solve the North Korea problem, then the U.S. will. He's made it clear that he doesn't think that China is currently doing enough. So where does he stand on the U.S. taking unilateral action? And is there a deadline, such as G20, maybe an ultimatum, or a deadline for which the U.S. would need to, that China would need to do more?
I think the president has made it very clear that if there are deadlines, he is not going to advertise those deadlines. So I am not going to make any specific comments as to whether he has a deadline or if he has a deadline, when it is. That would make absolutely no sense. I can assure you we will have conversations with our G20 counterparts about this next week, and we've been having these conversations, and we will continue to do more on this. One more question. You're right here.
There was a little bit of a legislative snafu, but it does appear that the House and Senate will pass sanctions legislation related to Russia, includes a broad range of sanctions. I don't think we've gotten a straight answer from the White House on whether the president would support that. Does the administration support that? Is Treasury prepared to implement those sanctions?
Well, let me just be clear. Again, not only the sanctions that we have on North Korea today, we have sanctions on Iran already. We will continue to put more sanctions on Iran around their ballistic missile and other programs. You've seen we've used sanctions in other areas. We will continue to use these. So notwithstanding anything Congress passes, I can assure you this administration and the Treasury Department will use sanctions to the maximum amount available by law. We don't need Congress to tell us to put on more. We're going to do more whether they tell us or not. But anyway, we look Russia sanctions. We got plenty of those on as well. So again, thank you everybody. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At the top of yesterday's briefing, you heard from Tom Homan and John Huber about how important the two immigration bills the House will be voting on today are in our efforts to secure the border and protect our communities. This morning, Secretary Kelly spoke about Kate's Law and the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act on the Hill, important legislation that is supported by 80% of Americans. Yesterday, the President heard the tragic stories of the innocent American lives that were ended by a violent individual who should never have been allowed into our country or our communities. A star high school athlete from Los Angeles who was killed by a member of the 18th Street Gang while his mother was serving her second tour of duty in Iraq, and Joshua Wilkerson, who was brutally beaten and tortured to death by his classmate in Texas, who then set his body on fire. Christy Pena, a 14-year-old girl who was raped and murdered by a man who had multiple warrants out for other crimes involving kidnapping and rape. 25 years later, he was finally located in his native Mexico, where he fled after murdering Christy in 1990. The President also heard from federal immigration officials and local sheriffs who are on the front lines of this fight to protect innocent American lives. These laws will help to empower the federal government in partnership with local authorities to more easily locate and remove these violent individuals and prevent so-called sanctuary cities from receiving benefits from the very agency whose rules they are refusing to enforce. The President looks forward to seeing these common sense proposals pass the House today so we can be one step closer to helping fulfill his campaign promise to help stop these horrific crimes. Yesterday, we were disappointed to see that people living in 14 out of Nevada's 18 counties will be left without a single choice on the state's Obamacare exchanges, specifically citing difficulties due to a shrinking and deteriorating market. And to add insult to injury, the thousands of people living in Nevada without access to health insurance on the Obamacare exchanges will then be taxed for not having insurance that isn't even available to them. This is yet another reminder that Obamacare is continuing to collapse, leaving millions of people around the country suffering and the consequences of this failed law. The Vice President is back on the Hill this afternoon for one-on-one meetings on health care as work continues this week towards repealing and replacing Obamacare. We are keeping these American families, business owners, and individuals at the front of our minds. They've been paying ever-increasing premiums and still losing their plans and their doctors. And it's time for Republicans in the Senate to fulfill their promise to the American people and come together around a consensus plan to fix this broken system. In terms of the schedule for today, this afternoon, the President will make a big speech on the importance of American energy dominance at the Department of Energy. The United States has been reliant on other countries for our energy for decades, but with new innovations and advances, particularly in liquid natural gas, we have had the opportunity to not only become energy independent, but to use our abundant resources as an important tool in advancing our global interests. I'm going to let the President get into more details on how we're going to do that later this afternoon. Hopefully you'll all tune in. There have been a few questions asked this week that and Sean and I both said that we would get back to you on. I want to address a couple of those now. On Monday, Sean was asked how we knew that the Supreme Court's ruling on the President's travel executive order was 9-0 when the decision was announced. In fact, the decision, which stayed the lower court's injunction on the President's executive order for all affected individuals without a bona fide connection to a person or entity in the United States, was unanimous on the point that the stay should be granted at least to that extent. 3 justices would have gone further and stayed the injunctions in full. No justice dissented on the point that the stay should be granted in part, and no justice indicated that he or she did not participate in the decision. Jennifer Jacobs from Bloomberg also asked about the IMF's projection about U.S. growth. This morning, the Commerce Department revised first quarter GDP upward, but both the IMF and the Commerce Department's figures show we still have much more work to do. The President has spoken out clearly about the need for faster and more sustainable economic growth that will create jobs and raise incomes for Americans. The IMF has expressed support for a lot of the President's policies, including more infrastructure spending, reforming our tax code, boosting educational outcomes, and adopting family-friendly policies. The President is also working to end job-killing government regulations and negotiate good trade policies that help workers. Lastly, Jordan Fabian from The Hill asked what deal breakers exist in Senate negotiations on the health care bill. The president isn't going to negotiate in public, but he has laid out his priorities to repeal and replace Obamacare with a system that provides greater choices and better coverage at lower cost. I can tell you that Obamacare is failing and new policy is around the corner. From our ongoing negotiations, we're confident that any amendments the Senate agrees to will make the bill stronger. The other bill out there that's gained the support of a majority of House Democrats is the Bernie Sanders single-payer plan that would cost the government $32 trillion over the next decades. 113 House Democrats, including the DNC vice chair, have signed on to this approach. The president believes that it's completely unaffordable and creates a one-size-fits-all government approach to health care. That bill and others like it on the other side that have been proposed are clearly deal breakers. Now that I've answered a couple of the questions from earlier this week, be happy to take a few now. John Roberts.
Sarah, in reference to the president's tweets this morning that have been a matter of some discussion today, you said earlier on Fox News that the president has a right to defend himself when he is attacked, and it's no secret that this particular program has been very critical of him. However, the nature of the tweets this morning has drawn condemnation from people on Capitol Hill, including the Speaker of the House, Senator Graham, Senator Susan Collins, all of whom are allies of the president. Did the president go too far with this tweet in its deeply personal nature?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that the president has been attacked mercilessly on personal accounts by members on that program. And I think he's been very clear that when he gets attacked, he's going to hit back. I think the American people elected somebody who's tough, who's smart, and who's a fighter. And that's Donald Trump. And I don't think that it's a surprise to anybody that he fights fire with fire. The things that this show has called him, and not just him, but numerous members of his staff, including myself and many others, are very deeply personal. So to then turn and pretend like, this approach is, I guess it's kind of like we're living in the twilight zone. They do this day after day after day, and then the president responds and defends himself, and everybody is appalled and blown away. Frankly, if this had happened in the previous administration, the type of attacks launched on this program, the things they say, utterly stupid, personality disorder, mentally ill, constant personal attacks, calling multiple members liars to their faces while they're sitting on their programs, the rest of the media would have said, guys, no way, hold on. But nobody does that. But the president, he's not going to step back. He's showed that, and that's exactly what he did today.
If I could just follow on that, Sarah, if I could just follow on that. A couple of the criticisms from supporters of the president have been that this particular tweet was beneath the dignity of the office. Where does the president draw that line on the dignity of the office?
Look, I think that he shows that every day in the decisions that he's making, the focus and the priorities he's laid out in his agenda. But he's not going to sit back and be attacked by the liberal media, Hollywood elites, and when they hit him, he's going to hit back.
Sarah? I have a healthcare question, but on this, just one other aspect of it. Some have suggested in their tweet response or public announcements today that the president misconstrued one of the messages that should have been gathered from the shooting that involved Steve Scalise and others, that the hostility of the verbal environment can create an atmosphere of violence. I'm not saying that, but members of Congress have said that about this particular tweet. I know that episode affected the president and those here at the White House personally, very importantly and deeply. Do you have any reaction to that sentiment that conversations like this create an atmosphere that is either dangerous or one we need to avoid?
The president in no way, form or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence. If anything, quite the contrary. And he was simply pushing back and defending himself.
Sarah, I do have a healthcare question. I have a healthcare question. So, you talked about the president's overall priorities. Late last night, as part of the amendment and evolution of the Senate draft, $45 billion was put on the table for opioid treatment, and health savings accounts can be used, according to this new draft, to pay premiums in the future. Does the president support those two initiatives? And why does he believe they make the bill better? Specifically, does he believe that opioid allocation will be sufficient, as many people do not, to address that problem?
I'm not going to negotiate the details, the back and forth in public, but I can tell you the president has obviously made fighting the opioid crisis a priority for him, and I would imagine he would be supportive of pushing resources towards that.
Savings accounts? Does he have
I
any
think we're always
particular
looking for ways to add additional flexibilities and something certainly to be considered.
Sarah, what about the Republicans who are criticizing the president?
I want to go back to the shooting and remember what President Trump said then. He said, "Our country will perhaps become closer, more unified, so important." Does his tweet this morning, his series of tweets, help to unify the country?
Again, Kristen, I think I've asked, and this question has been asked, and I've answered it several times.
Do his tweets help to unify the country, to do what he said he wanted to see happen in the wake of that shooting?
Look, again, I think that the president is pushing back against people who attack him day after day after day. Where is the outrage on that? You guys are constantly coming and asking, like, is this okay? He does it one time. This is day after day after day. And it's not just the president. The only person that I see a war on is this president and everybody that works for him.
Two questions to follow up on that. One is that I understand your point, but he is the president of the United States. They are cable news anchors, so he has to stand to a higher standard. One. And two, you talk about criticism. He said that former President Obama wasn't born in this country, right? So he clearly was a part of criticizing the past president, who was not immune to criticism himself. So I wonder how you make that argument.
Again, I think I've been pretty clear that when the president gets hit, he's going to hit back harder, which is what he did here today.
Doesn't he have to meet a higher standard than cable news anchors? Sarah, doesn't he have to meet a higher standard than cable news anchors?
Look, I don't think you can expect someone to be personally attacked day after day, minute by minute, and sit back. Look, the American people elected a fighter. They didn't elect somebody to sit back and do nothing. They knew what they were getting when they voted for Donald Trump, and he won overwhelmingly.
Sarah, how is insulting a woman
Given
on
the-
Twitter being a fighter?
What about the impact of statements like this on his effectiveness? There was a Marist poll this week that said 68% of registered voters said the president's tweets are reckless and distracting. Only 22% say that they're effective and informative. And Republicans on this question are split down the middle. Half of Republicans say that they're reckless and distracting. So how can you argue that this is something the president must do?
I answered this question yesterday in regards to the poll. I think anytime the president has a chance to speak directly to the American people, it's a good thing.
Sarah, as a woman, how do you feel about the president attacking another woman specifically for her looks, and what does that show as an example to how men should be treating other women?
Look, everybody wants to make this an attack on a woman and equality. What about the constant attacks that he receives or the rest of us? I'm a woman and I've been attacked by this show multiple times, but I don't cry foul because of it. I think that, you want to create this false narrative. One hand, it's like, let's treat everybody equally, and on the other hand, they attack, and he responds, and apparently that's wrong. I'm sorry, guys. I've answered this question. Allie.
Too, and this kind of gets to the point that's been made, and
exactly, this is the point that's been made, so I'm not sure why we're continuing to answer the same question.
You've been talking about the idea that the president is a fighter. I just want to put it in, because you talk about being personally affected by all of this as well, and that nothing is wrong with the president fighting fire with fire is the argument that you're making. So I would ask this to you, sort of on a personal level. You have stood here and talked about your family from this podium. Are you going to tell your kids this behavior is okay?
Look, I've been asked before when it comes to role models as a person of faith. I think we all have one perfect role model. And when I'm asked that question, I point to God, I point to my faith, and that's where I would tell my kids to look. None of us are perfect, and certainly there's only one that is, and that's where I would point that direction.
I want to ask you my follow-up question just on more policy points with the G20 coming up next week.
That would be a change in tone. Policy.
I disagree with that. I think we talk about policy a lot here, but I want to ask about his meeting with President Putin that is coming up next week that has just been confirmed by Gary Cohn and HR McMaster. And a definitive answer from you on whether the president will bring up election interference. It is clearly the biggest topic between the U.S. and Russia right now, the fact that Moscow meddled in the election. Is the president going to press Putin on that?
Obviously, I'm not going to get ahead of the president's conversation, as we typically do. I would imagine we'll have a readout after that conversation takes place. John?
Thanks.
I'll come to you next.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sarah. The president's tweet today, does it
help his legislative agenda? Does it help him win the votes of those 9 senators who have come out against that Senate bill? Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski, for instance. What's your view on that?
Again, I think we're just looking for new ways to rephrase this question. The president was attacked. He responded. There's nothing more I have to add than that. John,
As to his legislative agenda, I'm not asking about the tweet
Look, I
itself.
think the
I'm
president
asking about whether or not this helps his legislative agenda.
I think the president would love for us all to focus on the legislative agenda a whole lot more. You look at the coverage over the last month of the extended period between May and June, all of the major networks, if you look at their coverage and what they're talking about, they spent 1 minute in the evening newscast talking about tax reform, 3 minutes on infrastructure, 5 minutes on the economy and jobs, 17 minutes on healthcare, and 353 minutes attacking the president and pushing a false narrative on Russia. I mean, look at that in comparison. If you guys want to talk about legislative agenda and focus on policy and priorities, you guys get to help set that table. And 353 minutes of attacks against the president and driving a false narrative, and 1 minute on tax reform. That's over the course of a month. That's incredible. The numbers, guys, the numbers don't lie. The media's focus on priorities, they don't line up with the rest of America. Right now, we've got our economy's growing, the stock market's up, unemployment is down, jobs are back, and ISIS is on the run. America is winning, and that's what we'd like to talk about. But you guys constantly ignore that narrative.
Points that you make, Sarah, all of those points that you make, Sarah, about the positive elements of what the president's agenda are certainly true. All of those things are true. But the president today put out this tweet which takes away from all of that. And you expect us here in this room to simply ignore that? I think that's the valid question that should be asked of you right now. Should we just ignore this entirely?
I think he's put out a number of tweets on healthcare, on the immigration bills that'll be in the House today, but that's not being talked about. That's not being asked about. But the discrepancy, again, 353 minutes. You can't say that you want to talk about policy and then you look at the numbers and they just don't lie. You can't expect for that amount of attack and intensity to come on a president and him to never respond. John Gizzi. I said I was going to John Gizzi next.
2 questions for you, Sarah. First, did the U.S. administration send a representative to the funeral mass for Chancellor Kohl, or will they send anyone to the official funeral service July 1st?
I do believe that there is an official delegation. I'll have to get details back to you on that.
The question is this: you've had people turn down nomination to be Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. The President's on his 3rd appointee, I believe, for Secretary of the Army. And the ambassador to Ireland has declined the nomination, and there's no candidates for ambassador to Germany or France, both major allies, or Greece for that matter, an important country. Is the president having trouble recruiting people to fill some of the key slots that remain unfilled after 6 months?
No, John, actually the trouble isn't in the recruitment, it's in the vetting and getting them through the process. Like I mentioned yesterday, there are over, I believe, 100 candidates in the queue waiting to be pushed through, but due to the historic obstruction, it's taking much longer than normal to get a lot of those nominees through. And frankly, a lot of the people that are part of that process, one of the number one reasons we've had people take a step back is because that process is so lengthy. And hold on, I've got a Skype question from Chris Berg in North Dakota, and we'll go to that.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about making America great, part of the energy dominance and energy. Here's the thing: during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, we had some pretty scary times through North Dakota. Just a couple weeks ago, a judge made a decision suggesting that the Army Corps of Engineers may have prematurely issued some permits. This creates more uncertainty. My question is this: what specifically is the administration going to do to give these companies more certainty, more clarity as they make these billion infrastructure investments to move our energy. At the same point in time, our tribal leaders and tribal nations are feeling honored and respected throughout this entire permitting process.
It was a little difficult to hear, but I believe the question was focused on energy production specific to Dakota Access. And I think we've been talking consistently about this. The president is dedicated to increasing energy production in the United States, and we're doing a part of the review of the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's the administration working with those tribal leaders and stakeholders throughout that process to make it as successful as possible. A lot of the tribal leaders also want to expand energy production and development in their area, and we're going to work continuously with them to try to make that as successful as possible. Jordan?
Thank you, Sarah. I want to ask you again about this Russia sanctions legislation in Congress. If, as Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said, the administration wants to go to the upper limits of the law in keeping those sanctions on Russia, then why not support this legislation that basically keeps what has been slapped down in place?
Yeah, again, we're continuing to review that process until there's final legislation there. I've got another Skype question from Greg Merriweather in Louisiana. Hopefully we'll be able to hear him a
question is
little
on
better.
healthcare. Specifically, our governor put out a number that perhaps hundreds of thousands of people in Louisiana will lose their health care if this bill goes through. If you add the other states, that kind of puts it into the billion. Is there an acceptable number you all talked about behind the scenes of people losing coverage to get the greater bill through?
Again, I'm having a little difficulty hearing, but as best I could understand, you're looking at how Obamacare repeal and replace would affect the state of Louisiana. And I mean, frankly, Louisiana has been one of the hardest hit states in the country by Obamacare. Their insurance premiums have gone up over 125%. The goal here is to give people in the country choices. No one who currently has Medicaid will have their benefits cut. We're looking across the board, the healthcare plans that will lower taxes, reduce premiums, and offer more choices for people in Louisiana and across the country. And hopefully that somewhat addressed your question as best I could. Margaret?
Sarah, I had a two-parter. The president had let us know that he had planned on having an ISIS news conference to update people on the situation within the next couple weeks, which is nowish, but we're coming up on departure.
It's nowish and official.
It's nowish. I'm wondering, do you expect that we would get that update, whether it's a news conference or just kind of remarks, before the upcoming foreign trip, or whether we need to wait? And I also wanted to ask you, it looked like there might be some coverage of remarks at the fundraiser yesterday. It didn't work out. But beyond yesterday, are you guys looking at beginning to do that now for fundraisers of a certain size, to have some transparency or the ability to hear what he's telling donors?
Yeah, yesterday it was a logistical issue. Trying to make that and accommodate at the last minute was going to be a little bit complicated, certainly on the table for future events. As for the first question, we'll keep you posted when we have an announcement on that. As you guys know, the president is getting ready to depart for the Department of Energy, and we'll be speaking on that soon. Thanks so much.
So no apology from the president, sir?
We're back. We have a lot to talk about. This is the post show for the Sarah Sanders White House press briefing. I'm Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. I want to get your reactions. A bunch of people sent me reactions already. I'm going to read them on the air to what happened in that press briefing. We'll also, in about a half an hour or so, go to President Trump's speech on energy. But we're right now going to talk about that press briefing. This is Right Side Broadcasting, and let me just say real quick, we're viewer supported. We give you an alternative to the mainstream media. So if you enjoy our coverage and want to donate, you can either in YouTube click on the $sign at the bottom of the chat room, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Your donations are what allow us to do this and keep us on the air. Okay, I want to get to your comments about this briefing. I know you have a lot of thoughts about it. At the start of the briefing, or in the pre-show, if you were watching, you heard me say, well, I think one of the main topics is going, if not the main topic, is going to be the Mika Joe tweets. But maybe and I said, well, maybe they'll ask 2 questions about it. Maybe they'll ask 10. Like 10 was my high-end estimate. I think I was way too low in my high-end estimate. It probably took up a good 75% of the press briefing. Also, and they asked so many questions about it, and it didn't feel to me, where I get really annoyed is when they're asking basically the same question, or they're asking a question that's not really a question. Like when they say, President Trump said, Kristen Welker was like, President Trump said before he wants unity in the country, but do these tweets really promote unity? You're not really asking that to get a response from Sarah Sanders. You're asking that just to make a statement. That's not even really a question. So when they ask questions that are repeat questions, or when they ask questions that are basically just statements that criticize the president, to me, that doesn't move anything forward. Do that on your own time. Don't do that in the press briefing. So personally, I was getting a little irritated because I want the briefings. I certainly think the Miko Joe tweets can be asked about, perfectly legitimate to ask about them, but ask your couple of questions and move on. You're not going to get anything else. And there's lots of other issues. Isn't there a health bill being discussed? And lots of other stuff going on in the world. There was nothing about Iraq that I remember hearing. If there was, I missed it. Anyways, lots of stuff going on in the world besides that. So would love to hear from you. If you have comments, I will read them on the air. I'm going to get to some of your comments right now. At Lookner on Twitter is where to reach me. At Lookner, at Lookner, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Okay, I want to read some of your messages and comments. Vicky R. says, I am disgusted and outraged at the White House questions all talking about the tweet period. It seems like about the tweets. It seems like after 2 or 3 answered, shouldn't that be enough for the rest of them? Why do they keep asking the same question over and over? I give great kudos to Sarah Sanders. She handled that wonderfully. I would have stopped taking questions if I was her. That's from Vicky R. Vicky, thank you for writing in. Let me keep going. There's a bunch of other comments here people sent me. Zach Mullins says, Mrs. Sanders refuses to be pushed around, but I would still love to see Laura Ingraham as White House press secretary. Thanks, Zach, for writing in. Proud American says, Steve, these loony liberals are completely unhinged. Sarah did an outstanding job today. We just keep on winning. Kate Deplorable writes, Sarah Buck Huckabee Sanders isn't a coward like James O'Keefe showed CNN Zucker, who ran away from one question. The media doesn't know how to deal. Let's see, what else? Okie Basis writes in, don't care about his tweets. Women want equality. President showed Mika equality. Her in the press are giant babies who need to grow up. Oh, I'm sorry. And I have to get this picture off my screen real quick so we can do something. Sorry about that. Okay, now there you go. Let me keep reading your comments. We're taking your comments. This is the post show for the Sarah Sanders briefing. If you want to write in, happy to read your comment on the air. At Lookner on Twitter. At Lookner, at Lookner. Or you can email me at the address on the screen as well. Linda says, stop TV briefings. They want blood. And I'll say this. I tweeted this out during the briefing. I said, if you want an example of why the White House might want the briefings not to be televised, I'm not saying you should agree with this or disagree with this. I'm just saying if you want to know why they might want this, and this is something, by the way, I feel is woefully undiscussed in the media. The mainstream media is constantly criticizing and complaining about the White House wanting the briefings not televised, even though they make the audio fully available. So I don't see, when the media says, when Jim Acosta says, this isn't transparency. Well, why isn't it transparency if you just release the full audio of the briefing? But anyways, one thing they don't talk about, and this is just the mainstream media for you because they don't want to have calm, interesting discussion and get in depth on issues, is why might the White House want the briefings not televised? To have an intelligent discussion of that. And a point of view they might have is that, look, when you televise these briefings, they become these kind of circus things, and also they become very easy to just edit up into little sound bites and spin a certain way, and it becomes not about the issues. And one might argue that if you look at today's briefing, this was 75 to 80% of that briefing was on these tweets, repeated questions, and also it wasn't like the discussion went anywhere. It was the same thing over and over again, basically. So it's just a waste of time. As an American, I wanted to hear Sarah Sanders talk about a lot of other issues, and I didn't get to because all these questions are about the tweets and repeated questions. And so, perhaps the White House thinks, look, Americans are better served by these things not being televised, because when they're televised, you get something like this today, and the Americans don't get to hear about other issues. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree or disagree with this. I'm just trying to think, I just think that's a view they might have in the White House, and they might point to today and say, look, that's what you get when these things are on TV. They might say, that's why the Supreme Court isn't on TV, is because they don't want to become a show and they want to be about the issues. So again, regardless of what you think about that argument, I think that's an argument they might have in the White House. Let's see here. We have Bootsy Bateman responded to my tweet where I tweeted out, if people want to know why the White House might want the press briefings televised, today's briefing is a good example. Bootsy Bateman replied, agreed totally, but Sarah gets it done, and who cares what the Never Trumpers on the Hill think, not the people who voted for him. Cusps to POTUS. Coconuts writes in, Steve, mainstream media could care less about the Trump tweet. This was more about the left to make Trump look bad. Good for Sarah keeping her ground. Left are crybabies and losing, I think, their fight. Thank you, Coconuts, for writing in. Hold on real quick. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I made a mistake here. I forgot to do something, guys. I meant to change the lower third. Normally I have it say post show. Let me just change this real quick here while we're on the air. I knew there was something I might have forgot to do. We're not awaiting the White House press briefing. We're awaiting President Energy speech. Here we go. Sorry about that. My bad. Thank you, Joe, for writing in. Let's see. I'm looking for your more comments. I think somebody sent me a message. John T said Acosta was quiet today. And again, we're going to be in about 15 minutes or so. President Trump is going to be speaking on energy. And Joe, I'm just wondering, are we running that on this feed? Are we just going to have it here? Or like if people are watching this stream, let me know what's happening, Joe, with that. If I should tell people to go to one of our other streams or stay on this stream. I think we're just going to run it on this stream right here. But Joe, if I'm wrong about that, let me know. Victoria writes in, nothing of substance from reporters as usual, just lots of posturing. That's why these briefings need to be off camera. That's from Victoria. Oh, so I guess if you want to watch President's speech, it'll be coming on this stream. Whatever stream you're watching me on, you'll be able to see it there. On Facebook, I don't know about that. If you're on Facebook watching me, you might have to come to YouTube to watch the President's speech. I'm not sure about that yet. Very complex here. Let's see. We have like a parody Donald J. Trump account wrote me, I must now consider revoking CNN's White House press credentials after a new video released by Project Veritas. Jim Acosta is next. That's from parody Donald Trump account. Again, this is Right Side Broadcasting. Would love to hear from you. Look, maybe you liked the press briefing today. If you did, I would love to hear from you no matter what you think. So, we don't push an agenda here at Right Side Broadcasting. We want to hear from you, and we're happy to say, your comments no matter what they are. So write to me here. I'm at Lookner on Twitter. Feel free to follow me as well as you want, because I cover a lot of breaking news stuff on my Twitter. So if you like that, follow me on Twitter. Actually, Right Side Broadcasting is at RSB Network, so you can follow Right Side Broadcasting too. I am Steve Lookner. This is the post show for this Sarah Sanders press briefing. We're taking your comments. We're reading them on the air. Also, let me say again, I'm sorry to say this again, but I got to say it because it keeps us in business. We are viewer supported. We don't have like some big donor who gives us all this money, which is good because they would probably want to control what we have to say. But in the cost of being independent and being a truly independent media network is that we we need to rely on you to stay on the air. So if you would donate, if you consider donate, that would really help us a lot. Even small donations really help us stay on the air. And so you can either go into the YouTube chat room right next to the broadcast and click on the $ at the bottom of the chat room, or go to rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate. Deplorable Sandy writes in, the majority of the press in and out of the press room is an embarrassment to our country. If I were president, I'd refuse televised briefings. You know, it's interesting. I do feel when the White House first came up with this idea of not televising their briefings, I wasn't hearing as much as I am now from some people like I like that idea. I was hearing a lot of people, like in the press especially, but people on the left and in the press, and some other people as well, saying I don't like that idea. But I feel like now I'm starting to hear more people saying I like that idea. There's still people who don't like the idea, but I think once, you know what, it's like it's maybe it's that people are seeing both now. People are aware that the press briefings can be done with just audio, and they can watch it on TV, and they can go on the web and get it, and they've done that. And now, after having done that and seen what that's like, then you get a briefing like today. And I'll say it again. This was like, it had to be in double figures, the number of questions about the tweets, the Mika and Joe tweets. It had to be way over half of the briefing. If you told me 75% or something, that sounds about right in terms of the Sarah Sanders portion of the briefing. And it's just like, is that really helping Americans get the information they need? I mean, wouldn't Americans have gotten the same information with just a couple of questions about that, and then questions about other things like, say, the news just came out that President Trump is meeting with President Putin at the G20 summit. I didn't recall that being asked about. If it was certainly not asked about a lot. Iraq was not asked about a lot. It was announced today. Iraq announced today that they said basically the fight to take over Mosul is over from ISIS. You know, so what does the White House have to say about that? Lots of things out there to ask about, and you know, they just, so much of it was just repeated questions, or as I said earlier, non-questions, questions disguised as statements on these tweets. So look, I certainly see why somebody could make an argument that, like, the press briefings will better serve the American people if they're not televised, they're on audio, and we give people full access to them, and people can ask whatever questions they want, and we'll answer them, and people can listen to it. So I don't know. I understand there's an argument to be making them televised. I'm just saying, you know, I don't dismiss the argument to not have them be televised. Let's see here. Miss Tree says, Huckabee is like a mom to those reporters. I love it. The press should be fired. I am shocked they have a job, period. Let's see here. Jen Bowles 10 writes in, I love Sarah. It sucks she has to treat these journalists like spoiled high schoolers, but she stands her ground. That's from Jen Bowles 10. Roxanne says the Facebook feed cut out. Joe, and maybe that's intentional. So Joe, just so you know, the Facebook feed cut out, it looks like. Solomon's Temple says, mainstream media ship hit an iceberg several months ago. Water is slowly sinking it as news anchors play violin on the Lido deck. RSBN is a life raft circling. This is a tragic event unfolding before our eyes. Truth is coming. I want to show you an interesting tweet I posted from Dave Wasserman today. Dave Wasserman is certainly not someone who's pro right wing. He focuses on election stuff. But yeah, so just so you know, if you were watching on, the reason the Facebook feed went out is because we had to do that to start to broadcast the President Trump energy speech on Facebook. So anyways, so Joe, maybe if you get a chance when you're done, like while I'm on the air here, because I can't do it while I'm on the air, just like shoot a quick message to the people on Facebook saying sorry about the stream cutting out, so they won't be angry at us. Joe is doing an excellent job. The CEO, Joe, is actually producing today as well. So thank you, Joe. Let me show you this tweet from Dave Wasserman. who's not a big, like a pro right-wing guy. I think he's very neutral, and he talks about elections mostly. And he said, the increased self-importance / social isolation of media makes tweets like today's, no matter how wrong, effective with an awful lot of voters. So by tweets like today's, he means the Mika Joe tweets that President Trump sent out. So that's from Dave Wasserman, and I'll say it again, he is not a pro-right-wing guy. He's not a pro-Trumper. He is basically neutral as far as I can gather, and he just talks about election stuff a lot. Coconut says, can you guys break down how many reporters and time spent on the same question and send that out? Coconuts, if we had a giant staff here, that would be a fantastic idea. But our staff is so small, and we're so busy here just getting stuff done with our skeleton staff, because that's all we can afford. We don't have the ability to do stuff like that. But maybe one day we will. If you would like us to have more staff and be able to do things like that, feel free to give us a donation, because we rely on you for support. Either go to the chat room on YouTube, bottom of the chat room, click the $sign, or go to rsbn.tv/donate. You help us stay on the air. Deplorable Jenny writes, on another note, I have not heard much from the media regarding Christopher Wray as being President Trump's FBI director nomination. What are your thoughts, or what do you know about him? I know very little about him. I've just read a bunch of people say he's a very professional person with lots of law enforcement experience. So that's really what I know. I'm not a very good source on him. I probably should know more. But that's what I've seen. People seem to be pretty happy with the choice who know about those kind of things. So that's my not very insightful answer to your question. Thaddeus S. Caxor says, Sarah Huckabee looked like a kindergarten teacher after someone dosed the students with meth. No insult to kindergartners in the comparison. Ryan Bardwell says, Steve, glad Sarah filled in today. Sean would have had a full-blown panic attack, LOL. So, it's an interesting point. I was wondering today, Ryan, I was wondering to myself, what would it have been like if Sean Spicer was in there today getting all of those questions about the same topic? Would he have been more angry? I don't know. Well, Sarah Sanders was pretty upset, but I don't know. The vibe perhaps would have been different in there. Interesting question to think about. Taking your messages here, reading your comments and questions on the air. Give me a shout on Twitter @Lookner, or email me steve.lookner@rsbn.tv if you'd like to write in. Would love to hear what you think about today's press briefing. Llama X writes in, any idea who is the great mind who suggested White House to do a live on-camera briefing today? That was a masochistic press briefing. I will say, because I've watched the press briefings, because we cover them, that might have been the one press briefing which was most taken over by a single issue. There have been other ones that were taken over, but in terms of the amount of time taken up on a single thing, that might have won today. That might have been at the top of the list. William Glass writes in, MSNBC, Steve, why on earth would you want to watch the scummiest of the mainstream media? The scummiest of the mainstream media. The mainstream media has declared war on President Trump. Trump has always been this way. You attack him, expect a counterattack. As far as Trump's response to the mainstream media, too bad, too sad, get over it. That's from Bill Glass. Thank you, Bill. And Bill Glass also writes, subject, most entertaining POTUS ever. President Trump is the most entertaining president we've ever had. It is great fun watching him jerk the chain of the mainstream media and liberals. Go Trump MAGA, from Bill Glass. So we are about 4 minutes away, if it starts on time, from President Trump's speech. It's going to be right here. You don't have to go anywhere else. President Trump's speech on energy is coming up right here. And we are not going to do a post show for that. So once we go to that, just don't wonder where I am after that, because this is the post show basically. So we're just going to go right to the speech afterwards. And then if any breaking news or anything happens later in the day, I'll be back on the air. But we're still here on the air with the post show for the press briefing, and I guess you could call this the pre-show for the energy speech. And taking your comments, your questions. What do you think? What did you think about this briefing? What did you think? What else? I had some notes about what she wrote. Oh, also there was a little news today. I want to show you this. I don't know if people are reporting this at all. If I can get it up here, let's see. Here it is. Look, little news, little cabinet news. President Trump formally Jerome Adams to be U.S. Surgeon General. I just heard this while the briefing was going on, so I know nothing about this person, but I will look some stuff up. But there you go, your Surgeon General nominee. And I had written some notes about the briefing here. Oh, one thing also I should mention, and also, we just got a donation from 10 euros from James Wynn, Germany, and he wrote, "The questions about the tweets serves its purpose by exposing the media. Sarah reads the study showing 300 times more interest in Russia than taxes. The media must be forced to either reform or die." That's James Wynn, Germany. Now, James, I hope when you say reform or die, you mean in a figurative sense. We would not want to encourage violence against anyone. I'm taking that as what you meant, though. Thank you, James, so much for your donation. We really appreciate it. That's how we can do this. We get donations. People think we have a lot of money in the bank or we make tons on ad money. Neither of those is the case. And YouTube, we calculated it. YouTube is paying, I'm not exaggerating here, 99% less for ads on your broadcast than they did a year ago. This is not an exaggeration. We did the math. So, like a video, if it got, say, 1 million hits, in North Korea, but I took that as them kind of giving a warning that they could eventually have sanctions on bigger Chinese institutions. Now, Secretary Mnuchin said, this isn't directed at China, it's directed at North Korea. But I do think, I don't even know what language that is in. Is it Greek? I don't know, but Very Paid Up writes in, "Sarah was brilliant. Acosta has been silenced." Perfect. That was from Very Paid Up. Thanks for writing in. We are awaiting right here President Trump's speech on energy. That's going to happen anytime now. When it happens, Joe will give me a shout and we will go right to it. So what do you, it's in all of the hecticness of today, I had forgotten, actually. If I was better, I would have tried to find some story on what he's going to talk about in his energy speech today. Now, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, it could be let's have less regulations on the energy industry so they can do more. But I don't know for a fact. I kind of want to look it up. See if I can find anything real quick on this. I'm seeing this yesterday. There's an article here. President Trump continued his drive to promote an energy dominance. It's from The Hill. Here it is. I'm still looking to find the details here. Oh, he did talk. He said to American Indian leaders yesterday that many of your lands. Oh, let's see. I'm just getting a text. I want to make sure we're not missing the speech. Oh, good. We have a split screen up. That's amazing. Good work, Joe. Joe, we got a little split screen up. So we're keeping an eye out for the president's energy speech. So a couple things President said yesterday is that he said there are energy resources on Native American lands that are not being utilized. He said many of our states have also been denied access to the abundant energy resources on their lands that could bring greater wealth to the people and benefit to our whole nation. So it sounds like one thing President Trump might talk about today is maybe and lessening those restrictions. I'm not sure. We'll see. We are waiting. Again, this is Right Side Broadcasting. We're waiting for the president's energy speech. And we're also talking about the press briefing. That kind of wild press briefing today with Sarah Sanders. Also Sarah Sanders said, so she said a couple comments she said during the briefing. She said she didn't think President Trump went too far with his Mika Joe tweets. She said he fights fire with fire. She said She talked about how Morning Joe has said he's mentally ill and has a personality disorder. She said the president has been attacked mercilessly by the media. She said the American people elected a fighter, not someone to sit back and do nothing. And she was asked if the tweets were beneath the dignity of the office of president. And she said, he knows that every day, he shows the dignity of the office in every day in the decisions he's making, the focus and priorities of his agenda. If you have any thoughts on this press briefing, would love to hear from you. We still have a couple minutes, I think, until that speech starts, till the energy speech starts, which we're going to go to right here. But if you have any thoughts on the press briefing or on the energy speech, give me a shout. I'll read them on the air at Lookner on Twitter, or email me, steve.lookner@rspn.tv. Very Paydop writes in, mainstream media didn't ask one cogent question. They can't for lack of intellect. So Very Paydop was not a fan of the media in the briefing room today. I should also mention, what was I going to mention? Feel free to get alerted about when we're doing videos in the future. Subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notifications bell. And that way, whenever we do a video in the future, you'll get a notification. Hey, Right Side's doing a video. Also, like and follow us on Facebook. And feel free to like our videos on YouTube and share them on Facebook. That helps us so much when you do that. Then Facebook and YouTube share our videos themselves more if they know people are liking them out there. So we love when you do that. Patrick Barrett writes in, any idea of how big a part Pence plays today in the energy event? I have no idea about this. I know nothing about that, if Pence will be there or not and what he's going to say. So, no idea. Eileen Painter writes in, let's talk healthcare. Hi, Steve. There's a cute video just on YouTube. Could you send me the link, Eileen? There's no link in this email. Maybe I'll watch it later if you send me the link. I'm going to check real quick and just see if there's any kind of news updates here. Sometimes when we're on the air after the briefings, there are like some news happens and I miss it. So let me real quick just check here. President Trump has arrived at the Department of Energy today. That's where he's making the speech at the Department of Energy. He's going to announce energy dominance initiatives, including new pipeline permits and liquefied natural gas exports. That's from Mark Knoller. That's what Mark Knoller reports. I'll show you Mark Knoller's tweet. If I can. Here we go. Here's the tweet. President Trump has arrived at the Energy Department to announce energy dominance initiatives, including new pipeline permits and liquefied natural gas exports. We have a split screen. Where you see the White House now is where you'll see the speech eventually, when it starts. See if there's any other news. Here's another tweet from Steve Herman. Check this out. A White House official says the Trump administration will be removing unnecessary and costly regulatory burdens on domestic energy production. So that's something he might be talking about today. Here we go. Some more reporting from Steve Herman. I'll show you. During the speech, the imminent speech at the Energy Department, the president will announce new pipeline permits and expansion of liquefied natural gas exports, natural gas, not liquefied national gas, liquefied natural gas exports, and address barriers to coal exports. Let's see here. Don't put name on don't put name on Twee, which that's the screen name the person says. Home wreckers live in glass houses. Oh, I think they're talking about Mika and Joe in that message. See if we can find any more news here. Also, I don't know if anybody saw this, but this was a little news story that happened during the briefing. Police say man arrested in France after trying to ram car into crowd in front of French mosque. No one injured. There was a report out that might have been like an intended retaliatory attack. So just similar to the one we saw a couple weeks ago at the mosque. Was that in England? I think that one was in. So that happened today, reportedly. Just checking the news here, seeing if there's any more news that came out. We are awaiting the president's energy speech. We're also taking your comments about the press briefing, doing all those things at once. If you'd like to write in, give a shout at Lookner on Twitter, or email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. I'm just checking here my news feed to see if there's anything else we missed news-wise. And also remember that the whole health bill thing is still going on. I've heard there's some sort of deadline for the Republicans to get on board by the end of the week, but I'm not really sure what that means, that there's a deadline, like what will happen. Some people have said, hey, if the Republicans don't get on board by the end of the week, then McConnell's going to reach out to the Democrats. I am highly skeptical that the Democrats and Republicans could come to a compromise given the political state of things in Congress today, but maybe I'm wrong. I find it hard to believe there will be some kind of bill that enough Democrats can vote on without Republicans abandoning ship and vice versa. So I'm skeptical of all this compromise. Hamilton writes in, President Bush was intimidated by the press, etc. In second term, he was a puppet of the swamp. Trump shows with his tweets he won't be pushed around. Thanks, Stephanie, for writing in. I'm just checking the news here, see if there's anything more updated on anything. And anytime now, we're waiting for the president to start his speech at the Department of Energy. When he starts it, we will go right to it. We're waiting for that right now. It was supposed to start at 3:15. Sometimes these things start late. Also, press briefing ran, maybe they give a little time between the press briefing and the speech. I'm not sure. Feel free to write in before the energy speech, though. My Twitter and my email is on the screen right now. And I'll make one quick more plea for support, because we rely on you to stay on the air here. If you like that you can turn to our pre-show and post-show instead of going to the mainstream media, who really doesn't do pre-shows and post-shows for the briefings at all. Or if they do, they talk about like the same thing over and over again, and it's agenda filled. They certainly don't take your comments like we do. We just read what you write us. So if you like that, consider donating to us, please. rsbn.tv/donate, rsbn.tv/donate, or you can just go to the YouTube chat room next to the broadcast and click on the $ at the bottom of the chat room. Thanks to the moderators for moderating the chats today. Ryan Bardwell just sent me a message that I'll show you. Here's a message Ryan sent me. That's from Ryan Bardwell. I'd seen that quoted, that study quoted. I think Sarah Sanders actually talked about that today. That was a study about, I believe, recent newscasts, or at least focus of Trump coverage. I can't remember where I originally saw it. Thanks, Ryan, for sending that in. Okay, we are still waiting for the president's speech at the Energy Department. I think it might be the first time he's been over to the Energy Department. Am I right about that? I don't know. I thought I read that. At this point, also, it's just it's hard to me. It's a little hard for me to imagine that all the Republicans get on board in the Senate, because, like, There are some people, well, you have to please people on at both extremes. So there's people on the right of the Senate who want less coverage. You know, they want they want the states to be more free. They want insurance companies to be more free to not offer everything that Obamacare makes them offer. On the other side, there's people who are the most moderate Republicans, who most centrist Republicans, who want like more coverage, so it's like you have less. Some people want less coverage. Some senators want less coverage. Some senators want more coverage. How are you gonna, if you're Republicans, gonna figure out a solution that gets both of them on board? I'm not sure this is possible.
Well, thank you so much. How about another round of applause for Secretary Rick Perry, who's doing such a tremendous job here at the Department of Energy. To Secretary Perry, to Secretary Ryan Zinke, to Administrator Scott Pruitt, to Chairman Lisa Murkowski, Chairman Lamar Alexander, Chairman Greg Walden, to Chairman Mike Simpson, all the distinguished members of Congress and honored guests who are here. Welcome to a new era of American energy. A new era in American energy dominance, and welcome to an era defined by the pro-energy leadership of President Donald Trump. We're gathered here today as further evidence that President Trump knows that affordable, abundant, and reliable energy is the foundation of American prosperity. In fact, since day one of this administration, President Trump has taken decisive action to unleash the unlimited potential of America's energy resources, and we're just getting started. In one of his very first acts in office, President Trump approved the Keystone and Dakota pipelines, and the Dakota pipeline is up and running, and Keystone isn't far behind. And under the leadership of this president, coal mines are actually reopening in America. Coal miners are going back to work, and the war on coal is over. President Trump's been rolling back the Clean Power Plan. He's opening the way for more offshore drilling. And President Donald Trump sent a message to the world that we're going to put American energy and American jobs first when he withdrew the United States of America from the Paris Climate Accord. President Trump knows that America needs all our nation's energy resources to power our homes, power our economy, and really to power our future. And his actions in this Energy Week demonstrate this president's commitment to putting American jobs, American families, and American energy first. So with gratitude for his leadership, unleashing American energy, it is now my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. How are you? Well, I want to thank everybody on stage. They are really a terrific team. We have some of the real winners in the audience, too, that I can tell you, some great, great people. I want to thank Vice President Pence, as always. He's right there, and he has really been a help to this administration. And we have some big things happening today, and we have some very big things happening over the next month. And I guess probably I can say over the next 8 years, I suspect I can say that. It's wonderful to be here with so many pioneers and visionaries from America's energy industry, great industry. I want to thank the leaders of our great energy companies for joining us today and for supporting our efforts to bring true wealth and prosperity to our people. I also, that's true. Come on, give yourself a hand. You deserve it. You deserve it. You've gone through 8 years of hell, and actually I could say even a little bit more than that. You deserve it. I also want to express our sincere gratitude to the labor union leaders and members who have joined us today. Thank you, fellas. Thank you. Thank you. Your workers embody the skill, grit, and courage that has always been the true source of American strength. They are great people. They break through rock walls, mine the depths of the earth, and reach through the ocean floor to bring every ounce of energy into our homes and commerce and into our lives. Our nation salutes you. You're brave, and you. Thank you very much. Thank you, fellas. Before turning to the topic at hand, I want to provide a brief update on two crucial votes taking place this afternoon on the House floor. Very important. These bills are vital to public safety and national security, and I want to thank Chairman Bob Goodlatte for his efforts. Bob has been working very hard and really for a long time, but we got it going. First, the House will be voting on Kate's Law, legislation named for Kate Steinle, who was killed by an illegal immigrant with 5 prior deportations and lots of bad things on his record. The second is the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, which blocks federal grants to cities that release dangerous criminal aliens back into the streets, including the vicious and disgusting and horrible MS-13 gang members, and we're getting them out. We are getting them out. They're going fast. General Kelly and his whole group, they've gotten rid of 6,000 so far. We're about 50% there, and we're actually liberating towns, like on Long Island, where I grew up. We're liberating towns. Those people are so happy to see our guys, and our guys are a lot tougher than the MS-13 characters, that I can tell you. Liberation. And I'm calling on all lawmakers to put the safety of American families first. And let's pass these bills through the House, through the Senate, and send them to my desk. I will give you the fastest approval, the fastest signature that you have ever seen. Right, Mike? We will get that signed so fast. And so when we get back, the first thing I'm going to do is, how'd we do on the vote? I expect good things, otherwise I probably wouldn't be talking about it right now, to be honest with you. I just sort of low-key it a little bit. I don't like losing. I don't like losing. Neither do you folks. Every member of Congress should vote to save American lives. Many great members of Congress are here with us this afternoon. Some great people. Some great, great people. Thank you very much. Not only are they working with us on border security, but they share a desire to unleash American energy. I especially want to thank Secretary Perry for his tremendous leadership in this department. He has really done a terrific job, and he's also a cheerleader. He's really a cheerleader. I watched that in Texas. The thing I loved about him, he was always saying how great Texas was. And if you don't say it, I don't know. You got to say it, right? And you're doing it right now with energy. That's true. Along with Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke and EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. And we've been through our battle, Scott, not with each other, with the world. And now the world is starting to say, I think they're right. They'll find out. We have no doubt. But all three of them strongly believe in putting America first, which is what I believe in, which is why I got elected. It's called Make America Great Again. That's what we're doing. Make America Great Again. We're here today to usher in a new American energy policy, one that unlocks millions and millions of jobs and trillions of dollars in wealth. For over 40 years, America was vulnerable to foreign regimes that used energy as an economic weapon. Americans' quality of life was diminished by the idea that energy resources were too scarce to support our people. We always thought that. And actually, at the time, it was right to think. We didn't think we had this tremendous wealth under our feet. Many of us remember the long gas lines and the constant claims that the world was running out of oil and natural gas. Americans were told that our nation could only solve this energy crisis by imposing draconian restrictions on energy production. But we now know that was all a big, beautiful myth. It was fake. Don't we love that term, fake? What we've learned about fake over the last little while. Fake news. CNN, fake. Whoops, the camera just went off. Okay, you can come back. I won't say. I promise I won't say anything more about you. I see that red light go off. I say, whoa. The truth is that we have near limitless supplies of energy in our country. Powered by new innovation and technology, we are now on the cusp of a true energy revolution. Our country is blessed with extraordinary energy abundance, which we didn't know of even 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago. We have nearly 100 years' worth of natural gas and more than 250 years' worth of clean, beautiful coal. We are a top producer of petroleum and the #1 producer of natural gas. We have so much more than we ever thought possible. We are really in the driving seat. And you know what? We don't want to let other countries take away our sovereignty and tell us what to do and how to do it. That's not going to happen. With these incredible resources, my administration will seek not only the American energy independence that we've been looking for so long, but American energy dominance. And we're going to be an exporter. We will be dominant. We will export American energy all over the world, all around the globe. These energy exports will create countless jobs for our people and provide true energy security to our friends, partners, and allies all across the globe. But this full potential can only be realized when government promotes energy development. That's this guy right here, and he'll do it better than anybody, instead of obstructing it, like the Democrats. They obstruct it, but we get through it. We cannot have obstruction. We have to get out and do our job better and faster than anybody in the world, certainly when it comes to one of our great assets, energy. This vast energy wealth does not belong to the government. It belongs to the people of the United States of America. Yet for the past 8 years, the federal government imposed massive job-killing barriers to American energy development. Since my very first day in office, I have been moving at record pace to cancel these regulations and to eliminate the barriers to domestic energy production like never before. Job-killing regulations are being removed, and vital infrastructure projects are being approved at a level that they've never seen before. As you all know, I approved the Keystone XL pipeline and the Dakota Access pipeline in my first week. Thousands of jobs, tremendous things are happening. And by the way, I thought I'd take a lot of heat. I didn't take any heat. I approved them, and that was it. I figured we'd have all sorts of protests. We didn't have anything. But I have to do, whether it's protesting or not, I have to do what's right. But people celebrate those two transactions as opposed to protesting. But sometimes you have to go out and just do it. And you find out whatever happens, happens. But you have to be right for the American people. Thank you. I'm dramatically reducing restrictions on the development of natural gas. I canceled the moratorium on a new coal leasing. And you know what was happening? The new coal leasing on federal lands. It was being so terribly restricted. And now with Ryan and with the group, it's going to be open. And the land will be left in better shape than it is right now. Is that right? Better shape. We have finally ended the war on coal, and I'm proud to report that Corsa Coal, here with us today, just opened a brand new coal mine in the state of Pennsylvania, the first one in many, many, many years. Corsa, stand up. Come on. Congratulations. Congratulations. Employing a lot of people, and we are putting the coal miners back to work, just like I promised. Just like I promised when I went through Ohio and West Virginia, Wyoming, and all of the different places. And I see Bob back there. Congratulations, Bob. He's in great shape, right? You're in good shape, Bob, right from the beginning. Good. You just take care of yourself, all right? We're ending the intrusive EPA regulations that kill jobs, hurt family farmers and ranchers, and raise the price of energy so quickly and so substantially. In order to protect American jobs, companies and workers, we've withdrawn the United States from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord. And I won't get into it, but believe me, that really put this country at a disadvantage. Number one, we weren't playing on the same field. It kicked in for us, and it doesn't kick in for others. The money that we had to pay was enormous. It was not even close. And maybe we'll be back into it someday, but it'll be on better terms. It'll be on fair terms, not on terms where we're the people that don't know what we're doing. So we'll see what happens, but I will tell you, we're very proud of it. And when I go around, there are so many people that say, thank you, you saved the sovereignty of our country. You saved our wealth, because we would have a hard time getting to this newfound wealth, and that's not going to happen with our country. Today, I'm proudly announcing 6 brand new initiatives to propel this new era of American energy dominance. First, we will begin to revive and expand our nuclear energy sector, which I'm so happy about, which produces clean, renewable, and emissions-free energy. A complete review of U.S. nuclear energy policy will help us find new ways to revitalize this crucial energy resource. And I know you're very excited about that, Rick. Second, the Department of the Treasury will address barriers to the financing of highly efficient overseas coal energy plants. Ukraine already tells us they need millions and millions of metric tons right now. There are many other places that need it too. And we want to sell it to them and to everyone else all over the globe who need it. Third, my administration has just approved the construction of a new petroleum pipeline to Mexico, which will further boost American energy exports. And that'll go right under the wall, right? It's going under, right? Have it go down a little deeper in that one section, a little like this, right under the wall. Fourth, just today, a major U.S. company, Sempra Energy, signed an agreement to begin negotiations for the sale of more American natural gas to South Korea. And as you know, the leaders of South Korea are coming to the White House today, and we've got a lot of discussion to do, but we will also be talking about them buying energy from the United States of America, and I'm sure they'll like to do it. They need it. Thank you. Fifth, the United States Department of Energy is announcing today that it will approve 2 long-term applications to export additional natural gas from the Lake Charles LNG terminal in Louisiana. It's going to be a big deal. It's a great announcement. Finally, in order to unlock more energy from the 94% of offshore land closed to development, under the previous administration, so much of our land was closed to development. We're opening it up. The right areas, but we're opening it up. We're creating a new offshore oil and gas leasing program. America will be allowed to access the vast energy wealth located right off our shores. And this is all just the beginning, believe me. The golden era of American energy is now underway. And I'll go a step further. The golden era of America is now underway, believe me. And you're all going to be a part of it in creating this exciting new future. We will bring new opportunity to the heartland, new prosperity to our inner cities, and new infrastructure all across our nation. When it comes to the future of America's energy needs, we will find it, we will dream it, and we will build it. American energy will power our ships, our planes, and our cities. American hands will bend the steel and pour the concrete that brings this energy into our homes and that exports this incredible newfound energy all around the world. And American grit will ensure that what we dream and what we build will truly be second to none. We will be number one again all the way. We're going to make America great again. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.